mean, the learning outcomes principle is very important in both national and European policies and also beyond Europe, because it's a way of focusing the education training process on the learner to really be specific on what the learner knows, is able to do and understand. So it's a very important shift in perspective from, let's say, teaching and training. You should focus on what the learner does. So for us it is quite important to see how this principle is actually implemented now in European countries, and in particular in vocational education and training, where it is of kind of essential importance. So what we have observed is that there is actually very little systematic cooperation and exchange of experience in between European countries on how we understand and also how we implement this learning outcomes principle. So our idea is to bring together practitioners working on this topic here in Cedefop and start this exchange of experiences. So we started on that last year, but we thought that this, and I think there was agreement, this was actually a success. So we then continued this year and tried to further increase and deepen this cooperation, and this year also try to see how can we follow this up in an even more practical way. So I think that is the thinking behind this.
We actually were able to go into more depth to indicate what are the special challenges and tensions in designing, in writing and implementing learning outcomes. So participants from 28 countries have shared actually their professional, the practitioner view and experiences on how this is done in national context. So we have really built on the outcomes of the last Policy Learning Forum, but were able to strengthen it, to deepen it, to indicate challenges and options and also possibilities how to do it in a cooperative way.
Well, we've been doing a lot of work. I mean, more as a comparison of what is happening in different countries. We have just published a report covering 33 European countries, in a way assessing, evaluating what is the situation in terms of the use of this particular principle. It also builds on previous studies back from 2007, 2008. So we have been doing a lot of work. This handbook is an effort to try to bring together these findings from research and make them more relevant to practitioners. We presented a very rough draft to this Policy Learning Forum, which presents certain basic principles. It presents more kind of analytical chapters linked to research, and we also present a lot of links to national resources in this area. This was discussed, and we will now try to take it forward so that we can deepen and strengthen this handbook and so to say add value to what is happening at national level, because what we see, there's a lot of guidance material at national level, but what we try to do here is to bring together this so that countries can see that there are different ways of doing this, there are options, there are dilemmas, and this comparative approach we are choosing actually shows these dilemmas, but it also shows the opportunities which exist. So adding this European international dimension also adds value to the understanding of the principle and the approach.
Actually, through very vivid discussions in the forum, we were able to establish a very good common ground for the next steps. And one of them, as Jens already mentioned, would be then to further work on a handbook of writing learning outcomes, to deepen it, to really use it as a tool for cooperation with countries. So one strand of our work is actually focusing on this. We have also discussed a possibility of creating a network, a more permanent network on learning outcomes, and there was a strong support from the countries, and that network would bring together actually practitioners and would ensure some kind of continuity and stability in this work, but would be very flexible in terms of participation, and so this was also discussed.
We then also had contributions from our neighboring regions through the European Training Foundation. We also had input from an Indian colleague, and I think what we see is that this learning outcomes principle, which sounds a bit technical, is actually quite important to be able to understand education, training, learning across national borders and also across different regions of the world in a way. So India is also in a way working in the same direction. So it's quite a trying to develop a common language, making it possible to understand education training, but also to transfer and to exchange skills between countries. And so that was, I think, an additional dimension which became very clear towards the end of the PLF.
Yes, we are working, for example, on the global inventory, on national qualifications frameworks that have actually learning outcomes at a very center. So together with European Training Foundation and UNESCO, for example, this is one strand of our work here.
And I should perhaps mention the other strand. We are doing an interesting comparison of vocational qualifications in now 26 countries. 10 EU EA countries, 3 candidate countries, and then actually 13 countries outside Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in the Pacific region, and so on. And we are comparing actually the content, the profile, in a way entering into this qualification via this learning outcomes methodology, which shows in a way that it has in a way a kind of potential for comparison. And that will give us an insight into how the qualifications of European countries in a way stand, how they are designed, what kind of promise they have in comparison to qualifications from other countries. So this is part of our work, again, together with UNESCO and the European Training Foundation.
One of the important messages in the final panel was also that we need to strengthen the links to research, and research and practitioners, policymakers. So this triangle is increasingly important, you know, to deepen understanding, to deepen how we write, how we apply learning outcomes.